Convening this afternoon, assessing the situation. I'm saying it with great sorrow. Usually, according to this way too familiar tango, an Israeli response of sort is taking place. But tonight, somewhat of a deviation, if you will, a second barrage of rockets.
I think there's a few decisions they have to make. I mean, there's a major decision that, of course, how to retaliate against which targets and what's the magnitude of the retaliation. Of course, they have, if you hear the mayor of Sderot, you have this outcry coming from the public. It can affect their judgment, but we have to be very cool-headed, practical, and pragmatical. Another decision they have to make is the decision concerning the funeral and the delivering of the body of the prisoner that died. I think it's an important decision. I think they would go along in the end and return it, but under some kind of condition. The third layer is, of course, the diplomatic layer via Egypt to try in the end to get to some understanding that there isn't this exchange, there is this escalation, but in the end it's around and we contain it. So I think those are the three layers of the discussion.
Arsen Ostrovsky, the Security Cabinet convening today, but members of the coalition, members of the Security Cabinet and those who are not, are blaming the lack of action of the government already, calling for an immediate halt for this policy of containment, if you will, urging a harsher response. How do you understand the dynamics within the Israeli coalition at this point in time?
I think what was interesting is that we've seen quite unanimous support also from the opposition as well, including from Lapid and the other parties towards the government, saying that if any military action is to be taken, that they have their support at this particular time. I think that's important. I think it's also important to hear and see what the people of Sderot are saying. They're the ones that are bearing the brunt of this rocket bombardment, not just tonight, the last 30 rockets and mortars, I think, today, but really, the last decade plus, there's been very little peace. But I think, we're also coming off the back of Yom HaZikaron, Memorial Day, just barely a few days ago. I don't think the people of the South, people of Israel, want any kind of escalation, but Israel also cannot be held hostage and subjugated to the kinds of demands and extortion and terrorism we're seeing from people like Adnan and the Palestinian terror groups in Gaza and beyond.
Yeah, it was exactly this hour last week, Doron Avital, that we spoke about the Memorial Day and whether the war ever ends. Before we get back to Ashraf Al-Ajami with the same question, Arsen Ostrovsky, does the domestic rift in Israeli society comes to play vis-a-vis the Palestinians?
No. I think the domestic issue is one side, but when it comes to matters of security, I think there is broad consensus. And we're seeing that now again. You're seeing the opposition parties showing their support behind the coalition. I think overall, in times like crisis, war, violence, you see Israelis coming together.
Ashraf Al-Ajami, same question to you, sir, from the Palestinian standpoint. Let it be Ramallah, let it be Gaza. Obviously watching the developments here in Israel domestically. What is the view from Ramallah?
I think the Palestinian leadership in Ramallah cannot do anything in this aspect, especially because one prisoner passed away because of the hunger strike and the neglecting of the Israeli side of helping him or releasing him to save his life. The Palestinian leadership mainly is in a bad situation because the reaction from the Palestinian people is very hard and also very strong. From Gaza point of view, I think it is also a reason to start to speak about resistance and escalation and many things should be done against the Israeli side. I think the Israeli government did a big mistake in this issue, and also brought the escalation and the violence to its side without anything. I don't think that Israel will gain security and stability by these actions or by letting people just die in this way.
Yes, okay. We do need yes, please, Mr.
Yeah, but I do think the divide within the Israeli society has an effect on the situation. We can't take it out of the equation. I mean, there's a consensus about military action that have to be taken. That's not the issue. But the divide itself, the fact that everybody has to play towards its own public, and then the decisions that they are making are not practically completely tactical, and they are more oriented to their public. This is the real fear, and we have to be afraid of that in the Israeli society, but also within the Palestinian society.
The impact on the decision-making mechanism.
For sure.
Okay, we do want to cross back to the Israel-Gaza border. Hamda Salhut standing by for us there. Hamda, if Pierre Kulshendler in Sderot had 15 seconds to seek shelter when the sirens went off, where you're at, we're talking 5 seconds?
That's exactly right. We're talking anywhere from 5 to 10 seconds once those sirens go off to go seek shelter. The interception happening right behind us. We were able to photograph it. You can see it there on I-24 News' social media. It seems like this round might be headed toward an escalation. The joint operations room inside Gaza, that is all of the factions there, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Hamas, who is the leader, they're saying that they're ready for any sort of escalation. They are ready for any sort of Israeli response. They're ready to fight, defend the Palestinian territories, and to respond as they see fit. They've been warning for some time that their patience is running out and that prisoners are a red line for them. This was the first Palestinian prisoner to die of a hunger strike. It seems like a long night ahead here in these southern border communities, as well as in the Gaza Strip. We are constantly hearing Israeli drones and warplanes buzzing overhead. No Israeli retaliation at this time, but we can expect it sometime tonight, followed by continued rocket fire from the factions inside Gaza.
And yet, Hamda, judging by the previous rounds of escalation, at least, Hamas was reluctant to pursue full-on escalation. Will that be the case this time around?
Look, we're not really sure what is going to happen this time around, but we do know that both Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad are working hand in hand here. Hamas has to approve anything that comes in and out of the Gaza Strip. So if Palestinian Islamic Jihad is choosing to fire rockets, it all comes with Hamas approval. Hamas has been saying for not just weeks, months, but years that they are ready to fight the Israeli enemy. They are ready to put an end to the occupation, and they are ready to liberate all of the Palestinian territories here and bring back the diaspora from abroad. So we're expecting a long night ahead of conflict and possibly days of escalation, according to Israeli security sources. We're also hearing that the IDF is prepared for potential rockets from Lebanon. We did see earlier last month Hamas in southern Lebanon firing rockets into Israel, more than 30, and the Israeli military retaliating there in southern Lebanon. Now, while there's no confirmation that the Hamas faction in Lebanon will fire rockets, the Israeli military said they're prepared on all fronts. Ellie.
I-24 News senior correspondent Hamda Salhut there on the Israel-Gaza border. Thank you very much for this. We are taking a final 2-minute break, which will be right back with all the updates amid yet another violent escalation here in Israel. 2 minutes and we're back.
It's a living, breathing organism that pulsates through millennia. Touch it, listen to it, smell it, taste it. Experience the Holy Land like never before. Holy Land Uncovered, every Sunday, only on I-24 News.
The I-24 News team of talented correspondents are working hard for you. They're in the markets, on the streets, in the battlefields, getting the pulse of the story. Tune in for Beyond the Headlines to see how the top stories of the week are affecting real people. No commentary, no debate, just the best stories presented by our best journalists.
Discover I-24 News Radio. Now you can listen to I-24 News anywhere, anytime, for free. I-24 News Radio is the audio live stream of the television network with world headlines every 30 minutes starting from 7 a.m. Tune in for top news, magazines editions while in the car, in your office. Join us from your smartphone, tablet, or desktop to stay connected in the Middle East and around the world. Don't wait any longer. Head to our website or mobile application and click on I-24 News Radio to subscribe.
Welcome back to this special breaking news edition here on I-24 News. A fresh barrage of rockets from the Gaza Strip fired towards Israel this past hour. So let's cross now live back to I-24 News correspondent Pierre Chandler there on the ground. Pierre, the last time we were speaking to you, red sirens went off once again. The citizens, the residents of Sderot and the entire area of the border communities bracing for a white night of red alerts, as we've put it.
Absolutely. Somebody who came over to us said the party's just starting. So yes, cynically they're talking about a party, but basically they're talking about threats of rockets and obviously retaliation from the Israeli army on the Gaza Strip. And this is what everybody's expecting here. The question is whether, as I-24 News learned earlier, the army is bracing for possible rocket attacks from Lebanon, and that could indeed happen if the situation deteriorates even further.
Yes, and once again, we learned that no arena is isolated, if you will. You cannot make a distinction or differentiation between the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, Jerusalem, not even Lebanon, not to speak about Israeli prisons. And in this respect, Pierre, what are we hearing from the Palestinian side, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad this evening?
Well, we've heard they had a joint operation committee in the Gaza Strip in late afternoon, in which they threatened Israel that in case of Israeli retaliation on the Gaza Strip, there would be a Palestinian retaliation. That's the joint command of all the organizations, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, DFLP, PFLP, Popular Resistance Committee. They're all there, and they're also bracing for Israeli retaliation and a retaliation to the Israeli retaliation. And that's, the usual tit for tat that is occurring from time to time. The last time that there was such a tit for tat was in August 2022, less than a year ago, when also an Islamic Jihad operative was arrested, and that provoked rocket fire and Israeli retaliation on the Gaza Strip targets.
Yes, the time of the season, if you will. Pierre Chandler, I-24 News senior correspondent in the southern city of Sderot. Thank you very much for this, and take care. Of course, much more from Pierre live on the ground. Back here in the studio with us, Arsen Ostrovsky, Lieutenant Colonel in the Reserve, Dorana Vital, and from Ramallah, Ashraf El-Ajami. So, again, it is a familiar tango, if you will, and yet is there anything that can prevent? I wouldn't speak of the next round because we're currently at the beginning of another round, but what can stop this vicious cycle?
First of all, I think we shouldn't forget that we had those great fears about the holidays, about Ramadan, Easter, Passover, and it went pretty calm relatively. And then now this event. So this is the case in the Middle East. You don't know where it comes from. I want to remind the viewers again that at least the first Intifada started with an innocent accident, and all the time we have to be very alert to events that can spark an escalation which is bigger in scale. And I think our military generals and I think the politician as well as the Prime Minister, nobody wants a further escalation right now. This is not what we want on our table. So the attempt would be to contain it, but to show that we really can deliver a blow whenever such a thing occurs. So this is the story now.
Arsen Ostrovsky.
I think we need to also bear one important thing in mind, whether we're talking about Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Hamas, or now Hezbollah, which is threatening to rain rockets down from the north. The one thread that weaves all this together is Iran. We saw Ayatollah Khamenei just a few days ago during Quds Day events in Iran threatening more violence, more terrorism. We saw Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh meeting in Lebanon with Hassan Nasrallah. The one thing that unites them is obviously the hatred of Israel and their willingness to commit these kinds of acts of terror. So when we're looking at what is the cause here, it is Iran, Iran, Iran.
Yes, and before we go back to Ashraf Al-Ajami, allow me just to update you all. The fresh barrage of rockets about 15 minutes ago or so. We're talking 4 rockets fired from the Gaza Strip towards Israel. 2 of the rockets were intercepted and 2 landed in open areas. Back to Ramallah, Ashraf Al-Ajami standing by there. Mr. Al-Ajami, Hamas interested in escalation? Does it have more to gain or more to lose from a round of violence?
I don't think that Hamas is interested to have any kind of escalation. I think also that the strong reaction and action will be from West Bank, if it is in West Bank or in Israel. But there, the Islamic Jihad will act in a different way. This is what I think.
I think is right in the terms. The strategy until now of Hamas was, of course, an Islamic Jihad, that the events would happen in the West Bank. So we really should look at the West Bank and see that the flames don't come from there, because we have a constant array of incidents every day also in the West Bank.
And in this respect, we've mentioned it earlier in the broadcast, if the Israeli notion, or at least attempt to divide and conquer, so to speak, the different Palestinian arenas, the Gaza Strip is one, the West Bank is other, East Jerusalem, etc. This notion is somewhat slowly, but surely, and not so slowly, perhaps collapsing.
Eroding. And also the weakness of the Palestinian Authority.
Very much so. My question being whether it's on the Israeli side to reconnect those arenas and form a new strategy instead of the one that we're seeing that is trying to tackle each arena separately.
I mean, this is not the discussion for now, but Israel has to carve a new strategy in all fronts, internally and outwardly.
Yes, indeed.
We'll also save that. You need a longer segment for that.
Also with respect to the Iranian front, because we have to try to disconnect the Israeli-Arab conflict, the Palestinian conflict from the Iranian conflict, and not try to merge them together as a matter of policy. For sure, we have foes far and here.
Yes, and in this respect, Mr. Al-Ajami, do you agree that the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, Jerusalem are not separate arenas at this point in time? They're all circling back to Hamas or Palestinian Islamic Jihad influence?
I think they are not separate arenas, but Hamas now is interested to keep the situation in Gaza Strip calm, and they want to have resistance and actions in West Bank and in East Jerusalem. And I think this is the most concentration of Islamic Jihad and Hamas within this period and maybe in the foreseen future.
Arsen Ostrovsky, we're nearing the end of the broadcast, and I do want us to focus back on the Israeli side. Right-wing government, left-wing government, a mix, a center, you name it. Very similar policy all throughout.
Correct. I mean, I don't think there's been any drastic difference between this government now, the previous government for that matter, when it's come to a flare-up in violence like this. At the end of the day, I don't think any government can just stand idly by when its citizens are being bombarded with rockets. So there will need to be some kind of response. The question is what kind of response and when.
We have a few changes. We have to. I put the finger on the Minister of National Security. I don't think he's competent enough to handle the situation, and I think some of the measures that he took with vis-a-vis the prisoners' conditions were not in. Don't serve our case. So I think the previous government was more practical, more, and on the other hand, more targeted in terms of the mission it took militarily. So I think it's a real challenge for this government how to act, because words won't do the trick, and harsh words are not this is not what we have to play right now. We have to moderate, smart actions, well targeted, and this would be the challenge of this government.
Yes, but popular pressure and the existing tensions can lead elsewhere. Ashraf El-Adrami, before we conclude, simply put, where's the PA?
Is weak enough because of the Israeli aggression within the Palestinian territory, especially in the main cities in West Bank, which are Area A under the security and the civil control of the Palestinian Authority, and the Palestinian Authority under these conditions is losing control and losing credibility within the Palestinian people, and weaker than it can supply Israel any kind of help and security in this aspect. And I think there is no motivation within the Palestinian security services to serve the Israeli security because the lack of support from the Palestinian people, and because of the Israeli actions against the Palestinian Authority, if the cut of money or the invasions in the Palestinian cities, arresting and killing people daily basis.
Okay, and Lieutenant Colonel Doron Vital, when we started with the Israeli security prisons that were the trigger this time around, how is the Israeli prison service is bracing ahead of potential riots?
Yeah, I think we heard them expressing worries, and they're really put into action plans that they have, because if something would really ignite in the prisons, then it can really.
But how can you manage such a?
This is a real. There's a mechanism there. There are plans. There are procedures. There are way of doing it. You have to. I think they know what they are doing, and they are prepared. And right now, this is the main objective: how to make the prisons calm.
Yes. Well, obviously, we're at the beginning of this chain of events, Arsen Ostrovsky. But when it comes to Israel's international credit, where do we stand in terms of the operations, the retaliatory operations, if you will?
Well, the international community generally speaks up when Israel starts retaliating, starts responding. You'll hear calls for calm, for restraint, and so on and so forth. We haven't heard anything from the Americans yet. I suspect it'll be a matter of time. There was a statement just earlier that Foreign Minister Eli Cohen, who is in Brussels right now, and met with the EU Foreign Minister, so to speak, Joseph Borrell, who purportedly condemned the rocket attacks, which I think is a positive. But at the end of the day, Israel will do what Israel has to do to defend its citizens.
Yes, and once again we conclude this breaking news broadcast. Familiar scenes, way too familiar. Lieutenant Colonel Zorzona Vital, Ashraf Jeremy, and Arsen Ostrovsky. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. We obviously continue here on I-24 News our rolling coverage on this evening. You can always stay updated, of course, also online at 24news.tv or on social media. Right after us, Benita Levine with the news of the hour. Thanks for watching.